Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. They just posted the notes for the 11.1 class updates. We're going to be talking about those as well as a couple updates to affixes at the end of the video, so check through all the chapters and stuff that we've got. We're going to go through each of the healers, and at the end of each section, we're also going to give kind of like a final conclusion as to like where things are headed, how things are doing for each of these various healers, and of course, Revamp Plus at the end. Druid starts us off with a lot of different class tree changes once again. We don't have the full tree that's coming up yet, but we can see some of the new talents that they have going into it. The most relevant ones are that we're going to be getting, and this is in the description as well, we're going to be getting updates to more damage, buffs up for Typhoon, damage buffs for Rake, Rip, and Thrash, physical damage ability for talents like Circle of the Wild, increasing your physical damage by 5%, but it's 25% for Resto Druid. Circle of the Heavens is the magical version of this, increasing your damage by 25% for Resto Druids, 5% for everybody else. These talents are basically built to give you the option if you want to focus on physical damage or focus on magic damage as an R Druid in terms of increasing your output. When we get to the actual Druid specific stuff or the Resto specific stuff, you'll see why. And Lycar's Meditation, you retain Lycar's teachings, bonus from your most recent form for 5 seconds. The form shift stuff has been really interesting. There's a couple things like just survivability updates. When hit deals more than 12% of your max health, you instantly heal for 10% of your health, and there's a little cooldown to it. Being able to be bonded to your ally, where you're also healing your other ally when you heal yourself, vice versa. Those things are pretty cool. There's a lot of these survivability updates they have going on together, but the biggest ones are being able to Skull Bash, for example, while you are in, sorry, right here, being able to Skull Bash while you're in any form and then shifting you into cat form. Rejuve healing, wild growth healing increases by 5%. Rip damage reduced by 9%, while shred and swipe damage has been increased. Ferocious bite damage reduced. Cyclone duration reduced slightly. And they've done this change with a lot of the crowd control abilities. Blinding Light's included in this. Paralysis is included in this. Kind of across the board. These disorient effects and some of these hard crowd control effects are breaking off a small damage threshold instead of any sort of damage. Nice to be able to see on top of that. So those damage buffs are also coming in at the same point where all damage has been reduced by 20% for Resto Druids. And their intention with this is that as long as you're talented into those damage buffs, which we just talked about, your damage is going to be equivalent to previous patches. So it's meant, at least, to be a net neutral effect, depending on if you're focusing on the wilds for physical damage or the heavens for magic damage. The goal, of course, of moving Druid towards utilizing either physical or magic instead of weaving between both of them for like an awkward damage rotation. Interesting things. Flourish and some other healers have this too, is actually going to be causing an initial heal effect on allies, split evenly among them. Nature Swiftness increasing the healing of regrowth by 200%. Trank's channel time reduced to a base 5 seconds instead of 8 seconds. And the biggest one is that Harmony has been increased by 30%, the mastery for Resto Druid. But the bonus is going to be reduced with each additional heal over time effect. So rather than putting up an insane amount of hots and then having just ridiculous lay on hands you can be putting onto people, it's instead going to have some kind of diminishing returns as it gets higher up with the amount of hots. They say that the update is intended to reward more heavily the first few heal over time effects applied to allies, while tempering the scaling at large heal over time counts. This scaling will still always make it a bonus to have additional heal over time effects on targets. This is honestly a really odd change. I like in general that they are making changes to Resto Druid's mastery and trying to make it so you don't have to have like 50 million hots before you can actually start healing, especially in a 5-man environment as well. But at the same time, I'm kind of surprised they sort of locked Druid, especially in a key environment, into just only regrowth really doing the brunt of the healing. I still have a lot of concerns about the hots not really doing that much. And while the overall class buffs have given some 5% buffs here to wild growth and to rejuve, I'm still surprised that we didn't have any more spec-specific tree updates to further just juice up your hots a little bit more. That's something that kind of turned me off in beta for how the spec was playing, and doesn't seem like they're making large updates to that, but maybe more gear, maybe some of the updates that we see with just mastery in general is going to feel a lot better, even if the hot counts aren't going to be as high. So Be interesting to see, but not really game breaking. Maybe the class tree stuff is just going to feel a lot better to play around because that seemed to always be Druid's chief concern. For Preservation Evoker, Rescue now clears movement impairing effects from you and your target. Sleepwalk has a longer cast time, I guess. Flameshaper's getting some updates. For Preservation, and they're looking to improve some of the weaker talents, enable them to be more effective in dungeon content. Instead of increasing duration and spreading Fire Breath and Dream Breath, the Flameshapers can now cast Fire and Dream Breath more often, have them deal more damage, healing, in a compressed window of time, which is really critical in a key environment. We're adding a way to opt out of Enkindle so that Echo builds can function better with Flameshaper. The new talent, Fire Breath and Dream Breath, deal their damage and healing in 20% less time. Traveling Flame has been redesigned. It no longer increases the duration of your breath, duration, and spreads, but it now reduces the cooldown of Fire and Dream Breath whenever you cast Engulf. Now Engulf's cooldown is reduced by haste, which means you could be getting a really interesting feedback loop of like more Engulfs, more Dream Breaths, and just better burst whenever you actually end up needing it. Conduit of Flame crit strike chance is increased to 15%. Correctly specifies it increases crit strike chance above 50% health for Prez. Enkindle deals 25% of Essence ability damage. Expanded Lungs is now a choice talent against Enkindle. And Fan the Flames has been removed. For reasons, that's kind of fun. On the Preservation side, it's really surprisingly short. Dream Breath now heals yourself and 5 injured allies, so that guarantees the hot effect on yourself, so you don't have to purposely miss allies. It's kind of a nice quality of life effect. Dream Breath and Reversion no longer snapshot with Mastery. Instead, they reevaluate each time they tick based on the target's current health and your own. Also, kind of a cool quality of life, so you don't feel like this sort of pressure or anything like that for proc effects or anything like that to be setting up your healing or on use trinkets or something along those lines. But at the same time, I'm very surprised that there's not much else going on for Preservation Evokers. For Mistweaver Monk, nice to see that Paralysis is also going to be breaking off a small damage threshold instead of anything whatsoever. There also is going to be some updates on smoothing out the healing output of Mistweaver on varying target sizes and shifting rotational damage priority to a more intuitive space where players should optimally use each offensive spell and making it more obvious. First things first, though, Emperor's Favor is going to be making it so Shayloon's gift healing is increased by 150% and its cast time's reduced by 100%, so it's an instant cast, but it now only heals a single ally. This is super interesting and also a little bit strange. You would think that the healing bonus would be even higher as a result of that, but kind of cool that you can control it into one target. I don't think that this is going to be super amazing since Shayloon's is still your big resource you need to lean on when you're in like single target fight environments, but we'll talk about that more in a second. Dance of the Wind has been redesigned, so instead of being able to dodge everything and being able to stack it up, and it starts stacking once again once you do dodge an ability, it reduces physical damage taken by 10% and an additional 10% every 4 seconds until you receive a physical attack. This is probably going to feel really, really nice if there's any like shots from any mobs or anything like that, any like hunter type mobs or crossbowmen or something along those lines to better mitigate some of that damage. Going to be really cool to be able to see, and at the same time, it doesn't let you just raw immune things constantly with the dodge. Now, going back to what I talked about with the Shayloon's gift. Previously, you're leaning on Shayloon's, especially in single target environments, to blast your AoE healing. But they've now changed the Jade Empowerment, so it increases Crackling Jade Lightning's damage by 2,000% on the primary target. It was an 800% increase to the target and 4 enemies, but now it's doing 2,000% more and cleaves 4 additional enemies at 25% effectiveness. This means that you're still going to be getting some pretty damn good healing on trash mobs, but you can actually be using Crackling Jade Lightning not only for its damage on a boss fight, but also to do a huge amount of healing. So this will be really, really interesting in how they're doubling down on making lightning feel very powerful and very strong. And at the same time, you can also be using it with Jadefire teachings for a massive healing increase. So having an option to focus more on single target and like blasting some single target seems cool. But I do think it's still a little bit overkill in a world where we have Soothing Mist still existing and you could still just soothing into an envelop and just pound as many Vivifies as you like. Love to be able to see this redesign coming in. It's going to make the lightning feel really, really good on boss fights in particular. Yu'lon's Whisper healing has gotten increased by 100%. It was not bad. I think that's when you're channeling Soothing Mist, you're just breathing out more healing. Blackout Kick damage has been increased by 75%. Spinning Crane Kick damage has been increased by 30%. And Jadefire Awakening is now causing your Blackout Kick to cleave 2 additional enemies at only 20% effectiveness instead of 70%. So the big area right here, and this kind of goes back to what they were talking about at the start, is they want you to feel good about using lightning on single target or AoE, and they want you to actually be able to use Spinning Crane Kick if there's a large amount of enemies out there, instead of only sort of tunnel visioning down on, you know, your Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Big Blackout Kick cleaves. I like this change kind of a lot, because then Spinning Crane Kick gets relevant once again at like higher target levels, and you're not waiting for like 20 something targets. It might be something around like 8, 9 or something along those lines, making the spell just relevant again to be able to utilize, while still making it that your single target damage is going to be very strong. So it's kind of like your single target damage on boss fights gets really good with lightning, gets really good with more Blackout Kick damage, and you could still use Spinning Crane Kick, or now you can use Spinning Crane Kick without having to wait for 5 million enemies or something along those lines, which is awesome. Red Crane causes 3 Gusts of Mist per target, was 1, but only activates once per Blackout Kick and Rushing Wind Kick casts. So Teachings of the Monastery will continue to function to activate additional gusts, but not from their cleave damage. Again, this actually feels really good on single target. This is another area where it felt like you could do a lot of healing in AoE, but Mistweaver always does a lot of healing in AoE. You had lightning, the last expansion, it was like Spinning Crane Kick value. You know, there was a bunch of different ways if you had a lot of targets, you always did great healing. And so this is a great way for them to make it so Red Crane in M+ dungeons is going to do great healing, even when it's just like one boss on its own. And stacking that with the Ancient Teachings of the Monastery healing, all of that stuff just feels really good all together. So I'm very hyped about that. Shaylun's Gift has been moved up to about above the final talent gate, and now connects with Focus Thunder. So awesome to be able to see just a little bit of a change going on there. A lot of this stuff feels more like M+ focused, but as somebody who's been playing a lot more Mistweaver lately, this stuff really looks like it's going to be very fun, and looks like it's going to be really, really cool. On the Holy Paladin side, there's been a few interesting changes under this one. Just Reward looks like it's hype. This actually is an effect whenever you like dispel. I think it's just like a poison effect, if I'm not mistaken. Or if you like dispel that, after successfully moving an effect from an ally, they're healed for more. So like they made that a little bit better on the class tree. Huzzah, right? Great to be able to see. Same thing, Blinding Light, Repentance now break on a small damage threshold instead of any damage whatsoever. For Holy Paladin, they finally are going to be getting their double freedom with the Unbound Freedom talent. Increase the movement speed by 30%, and you gain freedom when you cast it on a friendly target. And it's a choice node with Echoing Blessings. Woo! Unending Light's been redesigned. This was whenever you would cast Light of Dawn, it would buff your Word of Glory. Now when you cast Word of Glory, it actually buffs up your Light of Dawn. This is great to be able to see, since Light of Dawn has been enormously weak this expansion and just not feeling great whatsoever. Light's Conviction causes the Holy Shock to refund half its mana cost when cast offensively. Huzzah. Flash of Light costs almost no mana now, 0.6% instead of 1.8%. Ridiculous cost reduction, but it also comes with a nerf to its healing by 25%. At the same time, they're buffing Holy Light's healing by 90%, but they're also reducing a lot of the extra proc effects that are buffing it. So Infusion increases the healing of Holy Light by 30% instead of 100%. Infusion increases the healing of Flash by 30% instead of reducing its mana cost now. I really like this change because, I mean, even though you're losing a lot of healing with Flash, it's nice that Infusion actually is increasing the healing that you're getting out of it, because sometimes you just need a quick heal. And unfortunately, Flash heal feels still, and it probably still will after this change, feel like it does not much of anything whatsoever. It'd be nice if it actually did something on that one, but with that mana cost reduction, I guess I can see why. Inflow of the Sunwell now increases Infusion Light's healing increase to Flash of Light by an additional 15%. So I'm sure that's going to help as well if you're getting the double Holy Infusions out of Inflow. And it now increased the healing of Holy Light by an additional 15% for Holy Light instead of 50%. So instead of actually having to have all these sort of stacking modifiers and all this stuff before you can actually cast Holy Light, their goal is to actually allow you to cast those spells even if you don't have all these buffs up. That's been a big problem for Holy Paladin, very similar to what Disc Priest experienced last expansion, where you needed to have like all the cards align before you actually did healing. And so now they're trying to allow you to just cast more of these spells without being dependent upon it. Though I will say at the same time, all of these buffs are coming in to your caster-centric abilities. And when you go to Lightsmith, Hammer and Anvil is basically when your Judgment crits, it procs a big AoE heal. That's getting nerfed by 20%. That's what caused your Awakening proc, where it activates your wings, to do a crazy amount of healing, because you'd throw the Judgment, it'd activate Hammer and Anvil and do crazy amounts of healing. So they're basically nerfing that. And Blessed Assurance, after you use a Holy Power Spender, it would increase the damage of your Crusader Strike by 180%, which was really big for Avenging Crusader. Gets massively nerfed on top of that. And so they're buffing caster spells and nerfing AC Lightsmith spells and AC Lightsmith synergies. Gotta tell you, not my favorite thing in the world, especially because Casterden is not my favorite thing in the world either. Being in a position where you're standing still in melee range and being hyper encouraged to cast spells does not sound too rewarding or fun whatsoever. So not a fan of where they're continuously trying to push Holy Paladin and what they're continuously trying to do with the spec, particularly because they started gutting all the caster stuff with Mistweaver because they're like, we don't want you to be a caster anymore. You are marked as a melee player. Paladin has been the same way. Actually, I think it might have been that way even before Monk, citation needed. But like, why are we going into more caster stuff? I don't understand. It's very strange. Very, very, very strange onto that one. But let's cheer up a little bit and let's check out Disc Priest changes. The goal of these changes is to reduce the number of cooldowns Disc has access to, bake some of that power into other abilities. Okay, this sounds exactly like what they did before 10.2. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we go to these changes. In addition, we're resolving some pain points in the talent tree, making it easier to quickly get atonements on allies by moving Overloaded with Light into a more central location. Finally, we're retheming Purge the Wicked into a shadow spell so that Twilight Equilibrium can be more consistently activated. Interesting. New talent, Divine Procession. Smite extends the duration of an active atonement by 3 seconds. Very cool. This is a stronger version of the tier set bonus we had in Amir Drasil. Inner Focus, Flash Heal, Shield, Penance, Powered Radiance, and Powered Life have a 20% increased chance to crit heal. Now this is interesting, but all of these abilities are very, very, very low parts of our overall healing as Disc Priests. So, 20% increased crit chance to heal, is that actually going to add up to more healing? Purge the Wicked has been removed and is now renamed to Encroaching Shadows. Now it causes Shadow of Pain to spread instead of overriding Shadow of Pain with a new spell. So we have to wait and see if this means that Penance is still going to spread Shadow of Pains, or if they're going to automatically spread. We're going to wait and see on that one. Evangelism now heals all targets affected by Atonement for 4,200 spell power, split amongst targets healed. Evangelism continues to extend Atonement by 6 seconds, and its visual has been updated. Now, this is a very strange one, because usually whenever you set up your big Atonement healing in a raid, you want to do it before the damage has happened, and then you are following up with your Mind Blast into your Penance to actually do the brunt of your healing. And especially when you would have your Evangelism ramp going on, you're extending it with the mindset that you would have no healing happening when you extend. Then your double stacked Penance with Harsh Discipline, your 8-bolt Penance, would do a crazy amount of healing, and then the Rift would detonate later, and that would do a huge amount of healing on top of it. And so now what you're having is over, let's say, a 6 or 7 second period, you're having a burst of healing on the Evangelism, a burst of healing on the Penance, and then a burst of healing from the Rift itself. Trying to concentrate all of this power into, a lot of your timing is interesting, but at the same time, I'm surprised that they're doing things to make it more about having this precision in terms of timing, since there's a lot of moments where the burst damage is super heavy in the raid, and it doesn't feel like you can actually have 6 or 8 seconds worth of continuous burst healing. Usually it feels like you only have a couple of seconds here or there to do the brunt of your healing. So I'm not sure if I love how they're trying to break up the burst, and it's kind of like pulse, pulse, pulse with your healing in a raid. I guess we're going to have to see on raid testing. Contrition has been made baseline. It's so funny. Somebody came to my chat the other day and was like, when are they going to do this? And I'm like, who cares if they did this, because contrition sucks. That guy knew, though. That guy really knew, and actually logs his penance healing. So, hey, cool. Good for that guy. Penance healing now triggers Divine Aegis. Okay, interesting. You'll see in a sec. Powered Shield Absorb's been increased by 15%. Well, that's a surprising buff. Okay. Powered Radiance Healing has been increased to 40 yards. This is a huge, huge buff for a lot of players. It used to be that you had to watch who you targeted, and you still kind of do, right? So that you would actually have your atonements bounce to the correct targets. This is going to save a lot of people some gray hairs. Great to be able to see that. Luminous Barrier Healing increased by 20%. Now, I thought it was funny they wanted to reduce our cooldowns, reduce the number of cooldowns, and then they buffed Luminous Barrier for some reason. Indemnity increased the duration of atonement applied by shield by 4 seconds, was 3. Cool. Ultimate Penitence gives you a shield for 100% of your health instead of 50%. Cool. Smite damage increased by 25%. Very cool. Very big fan. Notably, I have been a really big hater of when Smite feels like it does no healing whatsoever and you have to rely on all these modifiers and stuff. So base Smite healing being better, I think, is a fantastic thing. Shadow Pain damage increased by 25%, I also think is a fantastic thing. Putting up your dots has felt really bad this expansion. It feels like they almost do nothing. So they even talk about that, where they say it should be an important part of the kit to provide a steady stream of healing. Its damage has been weaker than we'd like, especially compared to spells like Rift. So we're bringing it up and reducing Rift's damage. This has a side effect of boosting Oracle's damage comparatively to Voidweaver. These things are both fair. Oracle has been so bad for disc because your Rift damage is so high, and they was buffing Smite and Penance damage. And unbuffed, those abilities are pretty weak. So, will be interesting. It actually feels like you could probably even get away with using Penance defensively here and there when you need some prio target healing, which has been a really big weak spot for the spec. And usually what you would do in that situation is you would go use an ability called Rapture. I'll go back to this in a sec, though. But I am amazed that they removed Rapture, man. I'm very amazed. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Pain and Suffering, to further increase your dot damage, is now 15 and 30% instead of 7 and 15%. Huge buff. Void Summoner now only triggers from Mind Blast and Penance casts. Ooh. Okay. So, if you didn't know before, Void Summoner used to be, or currently is, proccing off of Smite casts, Mind Blast, and Penance as well. So this means you no longer have to be sitting there tunneling Smites to reduce the cooldown further of your pet. There's going to be a lot more consistency for your pet's duration, but that also means that if you have a lot of haste, you're not going to get this infinite uptime with your pet any longer. They also remove Train of Thought, so you can't smite more to get more penances to get more cooldown reduction instead. This means that they've effectively buffed Void Summoner and removed those extra modifiers that were allowing it to have a lower cooldown and have these big swings where somebody would have really high uptime or really low uptime depending on their haste levels. I do like this in theory, and I am very curious if they need to make the Void Summoner buffs a little bit stronger. Honestly, I don't even know if they really need to even have Void Summoner as a talent any longer. If they're going to get rid of the Smite aspect, then you basically are just taking Void Summoner as a pathway to Inescapable Torment to give you more extensions on your Shadow Covenant. So, not sure if this even really needs to exist whatsoever. Might be on the chopping block later. Divine Aegis no longer triggers from periodic healing or atonement or causes powered shield crit heals to be stronger. But its absorb has been increased by 30%, was 5. Can anyone else say dead talent? I mean, this is very similar. It's funny enough because, again, your crit healing would actually end up producing these shields. So basically, you would have to go back up here, take Inner Focus, and then, you know, putting together a build for Flash Heal, Penance, and Radiance direct healing, which I don't think is really going to be happening in a PvE environment. So sounds very much like some PvP stuff going on, right? Ultimate Penitence, interestingly enough, has swapped positions with Castigation in the talent tree. So I saw this, and this also did not make sense to me, because Overloaded with Light is in a new position directly below Ultimate Penitence, and Rapture has been removed. So if you pull up the talent tree under this one, you have something like this. Rapture's gone, Indemnity's still there, and they said that Ultimate Penitence swap positions, which is fine, but then they say that Overloaded with Light is right below it. So I guess it's going to be like right around here, and then Ultimate Penitence is going to be up top. So you basically would be locking in taking uppies all the time, since it would be, you know, decently free talent to be able to have access to, or a lot more free than it is currently. And that also means you would be taking quite a bit of Overloaded with Light, or almost always be taking Overloaded with Light, since it's much easier to apply atonements to everybody without having to pay the extra cost for something like Heaven's Wrath for the cooldown reduction garbage. Really interesting onto that one. It does seem like they're going to like push and make sure that uppies is going to be good or else kind of thing. I'm very, very surprised, though, that they're not making it so that Ultimate Penitence doesn't give you like an immunity or something like that. So you still have to be really, really careful. In fact, I think they should make the shield also last for like 3 seconds after Ultimate Penitence is over. I think that would help a lot. But, I mean, we'll have to see. If there's some kind of additional quality of life boost that they can make for uppies, I think that'd make it a lot safer, but I definitely have some concerns on that one. New talent for Oracle. 3 additional Penance Bolts are fired at an enemy within 40 yards when healing an ally, or fired at an ally when damaging an enemy. This, pretty damn cool. Love additional Penance Bolts that we get out. Premonition has 2 charges baseline, and no more double charge ability or anything along those lines. I like this. Actually pretty cool. Getting more Penance Bolts out always is like a good thematic sort of theme to it. That said, I do still think even with some Entropic Rift damage getting reduced, it would take a lot to continue running, or sorry, it would be taking a lot for you to drop Voidweaver and instead run Oracle. But hey, we're going to see how it goes in testing. If they can kind of even out some more of the power levels, especially those Smite and Penance buffs that we had in like the overall disc spec updates, I think that there is definitely a chance. And I really am glad that they're trying to continue making Oracle a thing, because I'm hyped. Let's talk about Holy Priest, okay? Aiming to provide a better experience when using Divine Hymn, while pulling back on the number of raid cooldowns available, we're also doing some consolidation by removing Circle of Healing and adding more interactions with Prayer of Healing. Finally, we're looking to provide options for a gameplay style centered around Renew Uptime. I know somebody in here just lost their mind with that. In addition to existing playstyles, several talents have changed position. New talent, Lasting Words. Serenity applies 12 seconds of Renew to its target, and Sanctify applies 4 seconds of Renew to allies that it heals. This is an old tier set bonus getting added into the mix. Pretty cool. Light in the Darkness increases the healing done by Holy Word Serenity and Sanctify by 20 and 40%. Increase the radius of Holy Word Sanctify by 15 to 30%. That's going to be huge. Dispersing Light. 6% of healing done with Flash Heal, and Powered Life is replicated to 4 injured allies within 40 yards. Now, 6% is not a lot, right? But I think there's a lot of areas where just having some additional splash healing, especially in a 5-man environment, would feel really, really nice, since the spec has been so lacking in AoE healing this expansion. Divinity. Your healing is increased by 10% while Apotheosis is active. I'm sure you can guess what's coming next. When you activate Apotheosis, your next 3 heal or Prayer of Healing casts are instant and heal for 25% more. This is super, super cool and is going to make Apotheosis feel very powerful. A lot of people have kind of complained about how frustrating it's been activating Apotheosis and then your Holy Words are resetting, and then you don't really get a power boost in that moment. So I really liked being able to see what they're doing with something like Divinity. Eternal Sanctify, or Sanctity. Your Holy Words extend the duration of Apotheosis by 1.5 seconds. Really cool to be able to pool up Holy Words, get prepared, and start blasting a ton of them and extend your duration. This actually does make does make Holy Priest very cooldown centric in terms of its healing, and usually it's been very steady in its output. But you'll see later on they remove Holy Word Salvation, and I think this is a really rewarding way to get rid of Salvation, is to make Apotheosis feel very powerful by extension. Holy Celerity reduces the cooldown of your Holy Words by 15 seconds. Empowered Renew. Renew reduces the cooldown of Sanctify by an additional 6 seconds, so I guess it'd be, 7 or 8, and heals for 60% more when cast, but has a 12-second cooldown. Now, I'm interested in seeing if this is 60% more only when you are casting it, instead of any renews that you have, like the renews that you might be applying with things like Lasting Words, and making it so that all of your renews feel like really, really juicy and powerful on that one. Voice of Harmony, Powered Life, reduce the cooldown of Serenity. Divine Star and Halo now reduce the cooldown of Sanctify. Something I'm going to watch for is if the extra halos that you get out of Archon are also going to reduce the cooldown of Sanctify. That could be really cool too. Seraphic Crescendo has been redesigned. Now reduces the cooldown of Divine Hymn by 60 seconds, and it's going to compete against Gale of Song. Gale of Song was increasing the healing of your Divine Hymn and increasing the healing bonus of it. So now Gale of Song is going to be, when channeling him, you place 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending on up to 3 allies within its range every second. Prayerful Litany has been redesigned and causes the primary target of Poe to be healed for 75% more. Prayerful Litany has been really bad for a while, and in order to help make Prayer of Healing actually feel good, they're increasing its healing by 40%. All healing overall has been reduced by 8%. Holy Mending, I think that's when like Prayer of Mending jumps to a renew target, if I'm not mistaken, onto that one. When Prayer of Mending jumps to a target affected by renew, that target's instantly healed. Yeah, so they're actually buffing this one up a good bit to further encourage some of the like renew gameplay coming in. Poe's mana cost has been increased by 25%, and the cast time has been increased by 2 to 2.5 seconds. Prayer Circle, since you don't have Circle of Healing anymore, is actually triggered off of Sanctify. So you basically Sanctify and then get those faster Prayer of Healing casts. Cosmic Ripple Healing, the healing you get whenever your Holy Words reset, that's been increased by 150%. Lightwell has a way higher health threshold to start putting out those hots on people, which is massive. It's now 75%. Basically, at that point, any sort of raid damage is probably going to be proccing Lightwell. So you can like place Lightwell down and it'll just instantly start healing people and probably instantly drain itself of stacks if there's reasonable amounts of damage going out. Resonant Words also affects Powered Life. Lightweaver can now be consumed by Prayer of Healing in addition to heal. So this looks like you might just be running Lightweaver forever and be choosing to spend it on Prayer of Healing or choosing to spend it on heal depending on the situations, because it can also accumulate up to 4 charges. So whenever you're getting extra surge procs, you can be accumulating these charges and you're not having the pressure to spend all of them right away. Divine Hymn is now going to be channeling even faster at a 5-second duration. Now this is really important because we'll go back to Gale of Songs in that you're placing 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending on 3 allies every second, which is only going to be 5 seconds. So you're putting out 6 Prayer of Mending stacks effectively, since it's 2 stacks on 3, and you're doing that over 5 seconds. So you're putting out like 30 stacks of Prayer of Mending, which is really not that much compared to getting a full minute off of your Divine Hymn and having it on a 2-minute cooldown instead of a 3. We'll see how that goes. Afterlife, no longer grants a res cast during Spirit of Redemption. So when you go into angel form, you no longer get that freebie res. Holy Nova now reduces the cooldown of Chastise by 4 seconds and no longer interacts with Voice of Harmony. Crisis Banishment increases the crit strike healing and Powered Life. Trail healing is now 35% instead of 25%. And Apotheosis has been nerfed a little bit in that it now reduced the cooldown of Holy Words by 200% instead of 300%. So you're still getting the instant reset, but you're not quite getting as much cooldown reduction as you were previously. Kind of makes sense given the different buffs going out. Prismatic Echoes is now also increasing the healing of Renew while also increasing the healing of your Echo of Light. But the Echo of Light healing is getting nerfed very slightly from 5 to 10%, from 6 to 12% to 5 to 10%. So if you're playing any Renew environment, you'd probably still want to have the Prismatic Echoes though. Resonant Words has a buff, Benediction is no longer a choice node. In fact, I believe they moved everything. Yeah, I actually think they moved Benediction to another spot because they've removed Say Your Prayers, Sanctified Prayers, Revitalizing Prayers, Pontifex, Orison, Salvation, Healing Chorus, Guardians of the Light, and Circle of Healing. Crazy amount of things. They also are making a lot of talents one-pointers, which is great. Crisis Management is Flash Heal Crit Chance. Epiphany is Prayer of Mending. Cooldown resets that you're having when you're casting Holy Words. So you could take 1 point into this, cast a Holy Word, reset the cooldown of Prayer of Mending, and kind of go back and forth. Really excited about that one. Prismatic Echoes being a one-pointer is going to be really interesting since... Oh, that's right. Prayers of the Virtuous is the one jump that you're getting. I'm kind of surprised by the Prismatic Echoes because it's saying it's 5 and 10%, 15 and 30%, but then they're saying that it's a one-pointer as well. So I guess we'll have to see what's going on there. Resonant Words as a one-pointer is really powerful with a 40% buff to your next heal cast coming in. So really, really going to be interesting on that. A lot of one-pointers, which definitely makes it feel more okay that they're reducing all the healing by 8%. I like the idea of what they're doing with this and basically making it so that Lightweaver can be the buff you want to track and the buff you want to play around. And then you can kind of pick and choose if you want to use it for Prayer of Healing, or you can pick and choose if you want to use it for heal. Kind of bouncing back and forth between them and seeing how you really want to like adjust your gameplay as a result. I think this is exactly what Holy Priest needed to go into the new season, is to actually just have more choice in how you're utilizing your abilities. Prayer of Healing has felt really bad for all of Dragonflight, to the point you basically just used it to get more Sanctify casts. Then they nerfed Sanctify, and then you were, at the beginning of the War Within, where it didn't feel like you could actually utilize Prayer of Healing or Circle of Healing whatsoever. Now you can, and you can still have good single target healing at the same time. So the spec has the option to blast AoE healing when it needs to, and then it has the option to focus on single target healing when it needs to. It's exactly what the spec needed. I'm interested in seeing how the Renew talents are going to end up going. I'm not exactly sure how those are going to feel, but the fact that they're trying to make those things work and feel rewarding at the same time is very encouraging. Twin Sight is a new talent for Oracle. An additional 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending is placed on a second ally within 40 yards when casting Prayer of Mending. This, again, could be really, really powerful if you're playing around something like Epiphany and having a really big Prayer of Mending centric gameplay type setup, because Oracle is also buffing your Prayer of Mending natural healing that it's producing. Preemptive Care increases the duration of Renew by 25%. Premonition has 2 charges baseline, and keep in mind with Premonition, you could be using it for cooldown reduction, specifically on Prayer of Mending, and just spreading Prayer of Mendings out everywhere onto everybody all the time. So there's a lot of really good options out there, especially if you consider all the buffs coming into Apotheosis, and then more Prayer of Mendings, more Answered Prayer stacks, more Apotheosis uptime, more rewards for extending the duration of Apotheosis and maintaining that healing buff for long periods of time. I'm very excited about it because it'll be very good competition for Archon, and it needs to be as well. Very hyped. On the side of Resto Shaman, Ancestral Guidance has been removed. Part of the reason that they are removing it is, of course, citing how you're basically using Ascendance and AG together very frequently anyway. When it comes to Enhance, holy crap, they got a lot of changes going on. It's taken a while to scroll. There we go. My goodness. They're trying to focus on simplifying Restoration Shaman a little bit, and some things like Mana Tide, for example. There's no more Totem. It's actually just Healing Tide Totem, granting 80% increased mana regen to allies. Man, oh man, does that feel good, because then you never have to worry about your Shaman not just dropping their totem if they felt good on mana. Therazane's Resilience is a new talent, where Earth and Water Shields no longer lose any charges and are 115% effective. Cool to be able to see, and that's nice when you don't have another buff that you need to maintain all the time. Healing Wave's no longer a talent, it just learned at level 11. Wave Speaker's Blessing now additionally increases the periodic healing out of Riptide. Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem now triggers after casting Healing Tide Totem. Downpour now overrides Healing Rain for 8 seconds instead of 6. And the same thing goes with Totemic, where Downpour overrides Surging Totem for 22 seconds instead of 12 seconds. And they said, we're leaving some room for this to expire before the cooldown of Healing Rain or Surging Totem becomes available to avoid having to cancel the buff or wait for it to expire when Downpour is not necessary to cast. So this is really kind of cool to see, in that you are going to have more time to actually cast that Downpour if you end up needing it, and you don't feel like pressure just to like rip it really quickly or get like a slight bit of value out of it. So I like how they're changing around Downpour on that one. They've moved a lot of talent locations, but they've made Ancestral Vigor a 2-pointer, and they've removed Healing Wave and Mana Tide Totem as well. This overall has been pretty cool, although I think the big downside right here for Resto Shaman is that they're not really doing more when it comes to Farseer. They did a great job of reducing the mana cost at a Surging Totem to make it feel better for, you know, any of the Totemic Shamans to not feel like they're going all the time. And that's nice and all, but at the exact same moment, it's like, well, what are they doing to further encourage you to play something like Farseer, which wants to play around things like Unleash, and they want to kind of make things more simple when they kind of put out their mission statement, but they make very small changes to actually do and accomplish those goals. So I'm really hoping there's going to be more changes coming in for Resto Shaman. Also hoping there's more changes coming in for Preservation Evoker, because it seemed like they were just incredibly light with what they had going on. Odd to be able to see. All right, now let's talk about Mythic Plus. There's some changes coming in for the new season. New account-wide achievement, The War Within Keystone Legends Season 2. Attain a rating of at least 2850 during The War Within Season 2, and your reward is failing to clear a Mythic Plus dungeon within the timer will no longer reduce the level of your Keystone below 12 for the season. So, kinda, sort of, no more depletes, a little bit. You could still, you know, decay your Keystone if you wanted to, by just talking to Lynn Dormy and stuff. But basically, when you're trying to overcome the 12 wall, this seems like their first experimentation in no more depletes. So, you know, we're making some progress onto this one. Cool to be able to see. All right, pretty cool. The Keystone from the weekly vault will not decay below level 12 with this achievement. So if you're somebody right now stuck on 12s and just depleting 12s all day, they basically want you to just smash face and like progress in the dungeons. This is an interesting way of going about it, although I kind of wish it was like all keys above level 12 would not do this, because basically you'll complete your 12s and then it's like, oh, let's go 13, and then that's still going to be a challenge, and that's still going to be quite a bit of a pain. We'll see. New affixes. Unified enemy buffs on all Xalatas Bargain affixes with Xalatas Gift, increasing the damage done up to 50% and reducing damage taken by up to 100% for 20 seconds on all nearby enemies in combat. New affix, Xalatas Bargain Pulsar. While in combat, Xalatas summons pulsars that orbit players. It replaces the Bargain Oblivion in Season 2. So the pulsars are going to orbit players and, I don't know, attack them? Maybe? Guile, which is the 12 affix, has been redesigned. Now causes keystones above 12 to increase health and damage of enemies by 12% per level instead of 10% per level. Oh, man. So, more of a challenge as you're going to be going up into those higher key groups. And again, that's great that you're going to be able to get your 12s done. But then if there's even more health and damage of enemies past 12, do you just get your 12s done and then you kind of hit a wall? We'll see. Voidbound has been redesigned. Dark Prayer now has a 15-second cast time and grants all nearby enemies in combat Xalatas Gift when the cast completes. No longer grants damage reduction while active. Okay, so the Xalatas Gift and everything like that is going to be increasing damage done by up to 50%. Potency of Xalatas Gift granted by Dark Prayer, though, is based on the remaining shield percentage on the Void Emissary. So, depending on how much you actually kill the mini explosive, that'll depend on how much of the additional damage that you're going to be getting on top of it. So, this one, I feel like they're doing a pretty good job with making it so the keys don't deplete, but then also kind of kicking you in the teeth a little bit at the same time with the Guile redesign, making things even larger on top of it. We'll see, as PTR is probably right around the corner onto this one, but I'm glad at least that we're getting some good healer changes coming in onto this one. Let me know what you guys think. Personally, I'd really love it if keys over 12 just didn't deplete anymore at all whatsoever. Let us progress onto the dungeons. That's basically what people are going to be doing, is they're going to progress into the 12 keys and consistently try to like get better, get the keys timed, all that good stuff. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Huge love to our patrons for making all this content possible. Check it out in the description down below. And I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas if you're celebrating and everything. Thanks for all the love this year. You guys have been amazing, and I'll catch y'all next time.